Everybody, welcome to my show for drummers only. Today we're going to showcase two different drummers who have completely different styles. We're going to talk about Pick Withers, who's the drummer for Dire Straits and many others, and we're going to contrast that with Mr. Mel Taylor, drummer for the Ventures. First, we'll talk about Pick Withers. I think, as long as I can find him. Pick Withers, born in 1948 in Leicester in the center of England. He was with Dire Straits. He was the drummer on Sultans of Swing. The first band was the Primitives when he was 17. The second band, Spring, released an album with a dependence on a mellotron, but it did not chart. In the mid-70s, he was house drummer at Rockfield Studios. He played on Dave Edmunds records. Beginning as Brewer's Droop and meeting Mark Knopfler, the seeds were planted for Dire Straits to soar. He never wanted to be a rock drummer, did Pick. His interest proceeded to jazz. Terry Williams replaced him in Dire Straits in 1982. His drumming style was portentous, adopting a light, laid-back snare and hi-hat combination, eschewing heavy beats, speed, and pyrotechnics. The songs he played on were accessible, direct, and singer-oriented, almost like the bands of the 1950s, where drums and bass were not the focus. Since the 60s and perhaps before, the trend had been more drums, bigger drum sets, even two drum sets like with the Grateful Dead and the Allman Brothers. Drum sets are not cheap. The bigger sets were expensive to buy, expensive to maintain, and expensive to transport. One advantage to punk music was the elimination of supersized drum sets. Bands like Dire Straits, while not punk, also streamlined, and playing styles were more sparse, but just as vital. Now, on the other hand, Mel Taylor, which I'll try to put up for us here. Now, you might think of the Ventures as if they were a surf band. They claim that that's not the case. The Ventures were another form of rock, but not necessarily surf. They certainly played a lot of surf music. But they wanted to be more than just a surf band. Now, the Ventures were the first to play Fender guitars. A Jazz Master, a Strat, and a Precision bass. Then, in 1963, they switched to Mosrite guitars with a contract which expired in 1968. The Ventures returned to Fender because there was a new interest in surf music in the mid-70s when punk rockers discovered the Ventures. And the movie Pulp Fiction, which had some Ventures in the soundtrack, also helped to rejuvenate the band. The idea of pursuing a solo career is what brought Mel Taylor away from the Ventures. He was an American drummer for the Ventures. He first drummed for Boris Pickett, then for Herb Alpert. He joined the Ventures when their drummer, Howie Johnson, who had a car wreck and then left to be with his family. Mel was born in 1933 in Brooklyn. His little brother Larry became a bassist for Canned Heat. After trying out for the Ventures, the band liked Mel's edge. They asked him to become a permanent member in 1962. The Ventures were an American instrumental band formed in 1958 in Tacoma, Washington. A quartet mostly, they helped to popularize the electric guitar across the world in the early 60s. Popularity of the band's style ebbed in the 70s, but the Ventures were always revered in Japan. They still tour there. 60 years. The classic lineup was Don Wilson on rhythm guitar, Bob Bogle on bass, Nokie Edwards on lead guitar, and Mel Taylor on drums. Walk Don't Run, the single, was their ticket to fame. 38 Ventures albums would chart. They're the best-selling instrumental band with well over 100 million sold. They introduced fuzz tone and flange effects, concept albums, and the 12-string guitar to rock music. It became known as the band that launched 1,000 bands. Bet you thought that was the Ramones. Jump ahead to 2008, the Ventures were inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame. Wilson and Bogle were doing masonry work at the time and found they both liked guitars. They bought 2 guitars at a pawn shop for $10 each. Of course, this is not in 2008, folks. You're going to find guitars at a pawn shop for $10. Definitely buy them no matter what kind of guitar they are or what level of ability you have. Any $10 guitar can be made into a decent guitar with a little bit of luthiership. Well, back in the old days, in the late 50s, they called themselves the Versatones. And they played small clubs and beer joints around the Pacific Northwest. They changed to the Ventures in '59, and they recruited Nokie Edwards to play bass and Skip Moore on drums. Skip dropped out to work at his family's gas station. Shouldn't have done that, Skip. Howie Johnson replaced him on the cusp of the explosion that Walk Don't Run would cause. A string of singles continued their success, but quickly became an album producer. They made dance music. It was the golden age of hi-fi. That means high fidelity, folks. Stereo was still being invented at that time. In 1961, Edwards switched instruments with Bogle. This move crystallized their sound, which was sort of like a jazzier form of surf rock, but not really. They were unique. Johnson played drums on the first 4 LPs and then gave up his throne to Mel Taylor, who had been the house drummer at the Palomino in North Hollywood. Edwards left in 1968, replaced by Jerry McGee until 1973. When Edwards returned, Mel Taylor left in '72 to pursue a solo career. The Ventures were now a nostalgia act. Mel wanted to play Prague. Mel's son Leon took his place until he returned in '79, but by then Skip Moore and Howie Johnson were deceased. Now here's a partial discography. 1960, Walk Don't Run. Raunchy, Caravan, The McCoy. These are some of the songs. Another smash. Ghost Riders, Wheels, Lonely Heart. In 62, Twist with the Ventures. The Twist, Roadrunner. And then in 63, Telstar and the Lonely Bull. Apache, Tequila, Green Onions, Let There Be Drums by Sandy Nelson. And 64, Ventures in Space. Penetration, and in 64, Walk, Don't Run, Volume 2, featuring Diamond Head and Pedal Pusher. Now, you noticed I mentioned Sandy Nelson there. I'm going to be doing a show about him. In contrast to someone else, I'll let that be a surprise who the other drummer will be. So what do you think? Pick Withers, the laid-back style, just as deft time-wise. Or Mel Taylor, who gave us so much in terms of bringing the drummer to the forefront. Certainly explosive, certainly into solos. Thanks for being with me on For Drummers Only. I'll see you all next time, and please take good care. Bye-bye.